Welcome to Nordic Funds and Mines 2025 company presentation series. We will have a lot of companies presenting today, so we get straight into it with Americas Gold and Silver. And with me, I have Oliver Turner, who is Executive VP Corporate Development, and he will now present the company to you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and thank you to all the viewers. It's great to be here in Stockholm at the Nordic Funds and Mines Conference. A lot of great attendance here and a lot of good meetings in the calendar. So very happy to take you all through Americas Gold and Silver. It's quite an exciting company focused in Idaho in the US. And while the name says gold and silver, we have multiple metals that we are currently mining today, including antimony, which I'll be touching on over the course of this presentation. So draw your attention to the usual forward-looking statements and disclosures to read at your own leisure. And on this page here, we have a summary of the key points that investors should be looking at when they look at Americas Gold and Silver. We'll run through these points in more detail over the course of the presentation. But basically, at Americas Gold and Silver, you have the right metals in the right country and in a fantastic operating team that's done this multiple times before, delivering a lot of shareholder value. We've been at the helm for just over a year here at Americas Gold and Silver since we took over management, and obviously have enjoyed quite a performance in the stock market, but there's lots more value to be unlocked at these assets, and I'm excited to walk you through them over the course of today. So stepping into the team first, because one of the most important things that you should always be looking at with investing in mining, of course, are teams that have a track record of delivering across all aspects of the business. At the helm of the business, we have Paul Hewitt, who's our chairman and CEO. Started his career actually as an underground miner himself before working his way up through management and eventually becoming CEO of Klondex Mines, his first major success as a CEO of a mining company, and then Karora, and of course, Americas Gold and Silver today. We'll run you through those businesses. Mike Doolin's our COO, 35-year metallurgist, been involved with the team for many, many years here, and is leading our efforts, particularly on the antimony side of things, which we'll be talking about. Warren Varga, the CFO, has a lot of experience with this business, and myself, the Executive Vice President of Corporate Development of this business and our previous business, Karora, which I'll touch on. Last little bit here on the team, which is very important. This team has been known as the turnaround team. What we like to do is to step into struggling assets that we know we can fix from an operating perspective. We inject the right capital into those assets, turn them around operationally, unlock the value that's been trapped in them, and then do some accretive regional M&A. And we've had two wonderful success stories so far. The first one being Klondex Mines on this page, as you can see here. That was scaled from zero production up to about 200,000 ounces of gold, sold to Hecla for just under $700 million. And then Karora, which we joined in late 2018, early 2019, that had zero production out of Western Australia, acquired 3 mines, 2 mills, and sold that last year to Westgold for $1.3 billion Australian. In October of last year, we announced the deal to take over management of our next business, Americas Gold and Silver. We raised $50 million then, and obviously, as you see, the share price has performed very well. This really is in our wheelhouse of what we do and what I mentioned earlier in terms of turning around operations that have been struggling and undercapitalized. So stepping into where our assets are located, the primary asset is the Galena Complex in Idaho, which is located in the Silver Valley of Idaho, right up there in the northern part of the state. It really is the best jurisdiction to be mining silver in the United States. We'll talk about the history of that mining district in a couple slides here, but that is the primary focus of the business, is scaling the Galena Complex significantly past its historical production record highs and beyond. We also have the Cosalá operations down in Mexico, where we're producing about 2 million ounces of silver per year currently. Galena is also currently producing, and the team down there has done a fantastic job. We'll touch on that at the end of the presentation. And 2 assets that are currently idle. One is an exploration asset called San Felipe, also in Mexico, and then the Relief Canyon asset, which is currently on care and maintenance. A quick mention on Relief Canyon, because it is important for the context of the story. In 2019, that asset was purchased by the prior team, and suffice to say that after several years of work and significant capital injection, it did not work. I want to emphasize that that asset is on care and maintenance and not part of our core strategy anymore. So let's touch into how we took over management of the company and the key transaction that unitized and consolidated ownership of the Galena Complex. Mr. Eric Sprott, who is a very well-known investor to any silver investor and mining investors, owned 40% of the Galena Complex. Late last year, we announced a transaction with Eric where he converted his 40% of the mine into 20% shareholding in Americas Gold and Silver. He is now our largest shareholder as an individual. We also raised $50 million in a bought deal, primarily with former Karora shareholders, and closed the transaction late last year. In June of this year, we did our second financing, which now leaves us fully financed to do all of the turnaround work I'm going to outline to you today at Galena. We raised $100 million in debt with SAF, as well as a $11 million sidecar equity investment with Ocean Partners and Tech Resources, who are our offtake partners. So fully financed to get all the work done, no more equity being raised for the projects that we're currently working on. So stepping into where the asset is, I mentioned we're in the Silver Valley. This slide that you see in your screens right now shows many of the assets that are in the Silver Valley. 6 miles to the east is Lucky Friday's mine. That's Lucky Friday mine. That's Hecla's operation, currently doing about 5 million ounces of silver per year. You have the Sunshine Project and the Bunker Hill mine up to the northwest, and circled in blue there is the Galena Complex, a huge amount of production history in the Silver Valley. In fact, there's over 100 years of operating mining history in the Silver Valley. So a very good place to be mining, and mining will be going on for a long period of time still to come. Stepping into Galena. Galena has a long production history, just like the valley itself, and in 2002 produced its record of 5.6 million silver ounces, just under 600 tons per day, and just over 700 grams per ton. And to summarize our strategy, our first stage of our strategy as a management team on a page, we are taking Galena back to those production levels. We are taking Galena back to north of 5 million ounces of silver per year, and potentially well beyond that when you look at the scale of the infrastructure that we have. You'll notice here over the last 10 plus years, the mine has struggled to do 1.5 million silver ounces per year. We are changing that with the type of ore we're focusing on, changing the mining method, some of the drilling we've been doing, and executing as the operating team. And that change is well underway. We're almost a year into being at the helm here, and a lot of the work that we raised that capital for is well underway. So let's take a look at Galena itself. Galena is an enormous complex. There's over 120 miles of underground development, 4 shafts going underground, 2 mills on surface, the Galena mill, which is 750 tons per day, and the core mill, which is 500 tons per day, combining for about 1,200 tons per day of capacity. So a huge amount of operating capacity there, and a huge amount of underground infrastructure. In fact, that's over $2 billion worth of infrastructure already in the ground today that we are leveraging and using to mine. In resource, we have a combined resource well over 170 million silver ounces, so certainly no resource restrictions here in terms of mine life. But where the challenges were for the operation were on mining and on hoisting, getting that ore up the shaft and out of the mine into those mills. So our first order of business was to tackle the shaft. The primary shaft used for hoisting is the number 3 shaft. In fact, only 1 of 4 shafts is currently being used for production at Galena. The mine for the last 10 plus years has struggled to do 300 to 350 ore tons per day out of that mine and up that shaft. And part of our due diligence process when we took over the asset was to evaluate how we can increase production out of the number 3 shaft. That work, I'm happy to say, is already well underway. I'm going to cut ahead to a slide here that has some of the summary of the work there at the top. We completed the phase 1 of our shaft upgrades just a couple weeks ago. We announced that to the market, and we've already seen some fantastic results. We've increased skipping capacity from 40 tons to 80 tons per hour, and we set ourselves up for the next phase of work. What are we doing? We're increasing the size of the skip, which is what you use to hoist the rock up. We're increasing the size of the hoist motor. That has already been done, and modernizing the braking system. All of this will allow us to increase production from that same number 3 shaft from about 48 tons per hour up to 120 tons per hour. What does that do for ore production? It takes ore production from that 350 tons that I mentioned up closer to 900 tons of ore from a single shaft. After that, we are stepping out to take a look at the other shafts and how we can better optimize using all 4 shafts to fill those mills and potentially beyond. Both of those mills on surface are both expandable. So a huge amount of effort has been put into that first phase upgrade. Very successful so far. The second phase will be completed by the end of this year, giving us that increased hoisting capacity. So that's bottleneck number one solved and being solved. Number two was mining. At Galena, I'm going to jump to a picture at the front of the presentation here. For the last 10 plus years, 100% of mining has been done using a jackleg, which you see that miner operating there. It's a method called underhand cut and fill. That method, you're taking about 50 to 100 ton blasts per shift. It is much more labor intensive, higher cost, and lower productivity. One of the things that we did with the first $50 million that we raised in October last year was order equipment so that we could transition the mining method away from predominantly underhand cut and fill into long hole stoping. You see some pictures of the equipment on that page right there. We have a new long hole drill in operation underground, several new remote muckers, which are required for long hole stoping underground, which is a much larger, more productive mining method. In fact, we have over 10 new pieces of equipment underground in operation today that were never there before, and that the previous company did not have the capital to purchase and inject into that mine to be operational. So what has this got us? This has got us extraction of the first long hole stope at Galena in 20 years. Long hole stoping was used before at Galena. We are not reinventing the wheel here. In fact, it was used back in 2002 when those record production numbers were achieved. We are reintroducing long hole stoping at Galena. And what you see on this page right here is a photo of our first long hole stope. It was a 7,000 ton stope that was taken only 3 feet or about 1 meter wide, which is very important because that allows us to limit dilution in these veins and extract these very high grade veins with a much more productive mining method. That stope took us about 2 months to mine out. Using the underhand cut and fill method would have taken us about a year to mine out. So that is a huge increase in productivity, and we're able to remote muck and use this modern mining equipment. So that's the second bottleneck that we're working on fixing to get those ore tens up eventually to fill those mills up on surface that we have. So changing the mining method, again, we've done this multiple times before at other mines, at other companies. This is what we know best. Debottlenecking the shaft, phase one of that work is already complete. And we're doing some optimization work in the mills as well. What about grades? I mentioned that one of the levers we're pulling is grades. Galena is already one of the highest silver grade mines in the world. Our average head grade is about 400 to 450 grams per ton. That's very, very high grade silver. But we're also drilling off new areas in the mine that are immediately next to operating infrastructure with some phenomenal grades. We announced the 34 vein discovery where we drilled about 1 kilogram of silver. You can read those intercepts at your own leisure. That's double the grade of what we're currently mining. We also announced the 149 vein, 24 kilograms of silver in that intercept at a 21 centimeter width, which when you're mining 1 meter wide, you dilute that 5 times, that's still a 5 kilogram stope. Very, very high grades. So we can take grades even higher to push that production well beyond that 5 million ounces of silver per year. Before we move on to the next asset at Galena, I want to emphasize that not only are we producing silver, lead, copper, and gold, all of those byproducts are being produced at Galena, and we are now getting paid for those byproducts. Previously, the management team had a contract in place where they're getting penalized for those byproducts. We are now getting paid. The next big point here to make is that we are also the only currently producing antimony mine in the US today. With what we're seeing with some of these other companies, that is massively significant when you see some of the share price performance and announcement of government grants in terms of antimony assets. We are producing antimony today. This mine has produced 20 million pounds of antimony over the last 20 years. Not getting paid for it, we've changed that now. Moving forward, antimony comes with the silver. So as we increase silver production, antimony production increases. And I don't need to tell you that those byproduct credits at these prices are very, very significant. And this will be a very, very low cost mine and is currently getting lower cost as we mine each pound of antimony. So thrilled to announce that we are the only producing antimony mine in the US today. Just before we wrap up here, I want to briefly touch on Cosalá. This is our Mexican asset. It's a phenomenal high-grade silver copper asset with a fantastic team down there that is executing the strategy. That mine will do about 2 to 2.5 million ounces of silver per year, currently producing today and contributing cash flow to the company. The EC 120 zone, which we're transitioning into, will be increasing those production levels, and the team is doing an excellent job. Last, we'll step into a couple of the valuation slides, and then we'll hand it over to Jonathan for some questions here. In terms of silver exposure, this is one of the companies that has the highest silver exposure of any company in the industry. In fact, we have about 80% exposure to silver, which when you're buying a silver-focused company is exactly what you want to see. In terms of valuation, we have multiple analysts that are covering us, plenty of meat left on the bone. I will emphasize that none of that antimony upside is captured in those estimates just yet, so lots left to go there. And I'll finish on this slide here. 4 analysts covering us, more to come. Lots of them have launched this year. A fantastic shareholder base. We've taken institutional ownership just in this last year from 7% to 63% institutionally owned now. So it's been a fantastic shareholder building, register building program that we've executed. And you see our shareholders right there, Eric Sprott being the largest. A management team that is very aligned. We own about 10% of the company ourselves and are here to drive the share price higher. So with that, I think I'll wrap up the presentation and hand it over to you, Jonathan, for a few questions.
Thank you very much. I want to touch on the antimony because that to me seems like a big opportunity. How big of an opportunity is it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and certainly something that I think a lot of investors are not aware of yet, and something that has not been the focus of this company for several years. So we put out 2 releases over the course of this year on antimony, on some of the test work that we've done, which is confirming what was already done. Just taking a step back here, in the 1970s, 80s, 1990s, antimony from Galena went next door to the Sunshine Antimony circuit and was going in, and sold all over the world and into U.S. stockpiles. In 2001, that was shut down. And as we know, the majority of the antimony in the world has come from China over the course of the last 20 to 25 years. With China shutting off that valve and not exporting antimony anymore, the U.S. has a huge focus on domestic supply and stockpiling of antimony for a variety of different reasons. The antimony that has been mined over the last 20 years, which is about 20 million pounds, the company was not paid for that antimony. We've changed that contract, so we're now going to get paid for it. And the results that we put out this year, we showed 3 different ways to get to the same ratio of about 0.7 pounds of antimony to 1 pound of copper. So what investors can do, we don't have official guidance out yet on antimony, but what they can do, they can look at our forecast for copper production from the analysts, and if you take 0.7 times that number, you will get the antimony number coming out of this operation. There's potential there for 2 to 3 million pounds of antimony coming out per year and beyond that, which is very significant at these metal prices and very important to the U.S. government.
So there is no timeline or forecast when antimony will start to bring revenue to the company, or?
So January 1st, 2026, good question, is when we get paid. That's when that contract flips over. So antimony revenue will hit our financials as of Jan 1 next year, just in a couple months.
Yep.
We're currently producing it today and being penalized for it today, but that new contract kicks in. And then remember, as we scale the silver production, so that 5 million ounces and beyond, the antimony comes with it. It's in the exact same ore. Another way of putting this is that antimony comes for free for America's gold and silver shareholders. So every ounce of silver that increases, a pound of antimony increases at the same time.
You briefly touched on valuation. What would you say is the single most important near-term catalyst for closing the gap, if you will, to your peers?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be when we announce our guidance for next year, we'll have official guidance out there, which we did not have this year as we're investing into these projects. That's going to be important. We're getting more analysts launching on us at the same time. People seeing that pathway to 5 million ounces and beyond will be very, very important for people to see. More work, of course, on the antimony and unlocking that is going to be important. And we've still been in the mode this year, shaking off the legacy of the company. We did the same thing at Karora as well, and the same thing at Klonix previously. And the institutional investors are really seeing it and understanding it, which is why we've gotten such huge buy-in. But working on investors in other parts of the world, such as here in Stockholm and in Scandinavia, as well as working on retail shareholders and getting the message out there, I think will help us to close that gap.
Oliver, thank you very much for today.
Thank you very much,
Good luck going forward.
Thank you. Cheers.